So a little bit about me. I'm Bianca Ploss. I'm developer at the Davy Tree Expert Company. I work within the Davy Institute on a suite of tools called iTree. Our mission is to quantify the ecosystem services of trees and forests through assessment, understanding, and communication of their value. How did I get into coding? Through a series of suggestions and support, I took up a boot camp 3 years ago, and I managed to get my current role. But before I ever wrote a line of Python, I was learning the craft of metalsmithing at the University of Akron, the Myers School of Art. I spent hours and sometimes days at a time in the studio learning to form, shape, and finish metal by hand. My final college project, a pair of parrots built from layered aluminum, each piece being stamped with texture and dyed in vivid color. I've always been drawn to patterns in nature, especially feathers. The layered texture, the sense of motion, the intricate detail, they've always fascinated me. My goal was to create stylized parrots with layered wings, not individual feathers, but cut aluminum pieces shaped and textured to suggest plumage. And I wanted the piece to reflect more color than dyeing alone could achieve, something that shifted in the light and felt alive. Normally for that kind of detail, I would have etched the metal, but the studio was only set up to etch copper or silver. I wanted to use aluminum because aluminum can be anodized, and anodizing gave me access to the bold, vivid colors that I wanted for this project: saturated greens, reds, blues, and yellows. So I improvised. I cut the feather layers by hand, then used steel stamps to hammer texture into each of the aluminum pieces, every tap building depth and pattern. After texturing, I dyed the layers in different colors and riveted them together to make one cohesive form. It was a labor of love. My hands were sore. I restarted more than once. And when I saw the finished parrot project, the way that they caught the light with their color and texture, it was so worth it. You learn to measure twice. You practice on scrap materials, sometimes dozens of times, before working on the real piece. Most importantly, you learn that iteration is not failure. It's how we get it right. I often find myself making the same form over and over again, adjusting pressure, changing angle, switching out saw blades, all just to narrow down what could go wrong. I'd inspect the result, I'd take notes, and I'd try again, and again, and again. It turns out that the same mindset is exactly what I needed when I first started writing code. My first Python projects were barely functional, but every time I refactored, debugged, or rewrote them from scratch, I was just doing what I had already done at the bench, shaping through iteration. Whether you're hammering metal at the anvil or refining a function, iteration is what brings the work to life. It's not a sign that you're doing it wrong, it's how you get it right. Before I moved into tech, I worked as a production control manager at a dump truck body manufacturer. It was fast-paced, high pressure, and required constant coordination between fabrication, welding, engineering, purchasing, and suppliers. Some days it felt like pure triage. A customer would call in with a rush order that should have taken weeks, but now we had days. Parts had to be made in-house, but our welders and plasma table operators were already slammed. So I'd start juggling. Could we outsource a few pieces? Could we lean on a supplier to pull through for us? Could we do something ahead of schedule? Could we change the build just long enough, or just enough to be able to work with what we had in stock? One of my favorite challenges came when entire sheets of parts were miscut. Instead of scrapping all of that metal, we figured out how to repurpose those parts and use them for a different build. Once a vendor sent the wrong hydraulic tank cylinders, instead of sending them back, we recalculated our build and we changed our schedule to use them efficiently. I was always asking, how can we make this work with what we've got? And not just once, that was daily. That mindset, adapt, assess, reprioritize, has followed me into tech. When you're juggling legacy code, shifting project requirements, or surprise bugs in production, it's the same skill set. You're asking, what can I reuse? What needs to be reworked? Where can I get creative under constraint? Whether you're managing a job schedule or refactoring a system, sometimes you're not working with the ideal tool set, but the goal is still the same: ship something that works. That contrast really came into focus when I worked on the launch of our roll-off product line. I helped bring it from concept to production, essentially starting from scratch. I modeled the process after our existing dump body line and optimized it for the specific needs of our new system. In tech, we call that greenfield development, building something new with room to design from the ground up. But our dump body lines, that was brownfield work, existing processes, legacy systems, and unexpected quirks. Sometimes you could improve things, and other times you had to work around with whatever was welded into place. That contrast between building fresh and adapting legacy is something I see all the time now in coding. Sometimes you're designing a new tool. Other times you're reworking a 10-year-old code base that changing one function might break 5 others. Both take creativity, both take trade-offs. Being a parent while working in tech has its challenges. There are days when it feels impossible to bring 100% of yourself to both. When I'm deep in a coding problem, I feel like a bad mom for not being present. When I have to drop everything to handle a sick kid or leave early to catch that Little League game, I feel like a bad teammate. I feel like I'm letting my team down. It's a constant negotiation between priorities and a lesson in letting go of perfection. I have 2 boys, one is 7 and one is turning 3 next month. They're wild, hilarious, exhausting, and full of life. And they've taught me more about curiosity and patience than any other job could. One of the most surprising ways parenting has influenced my work is through their questions. Kids ask why all the time. Why can't we have candy for dinner? Why do we have to go to bed? Why doesn't this toy do what I want it to do? It reminds me of rubber duck debugging, explaining a problem out loud until those pieces click into place. My kids push me to break things down to their simplest form, and that mindset helps me to write better code and clearer documentation. And then there are the toddler tantrums. You can't just ignore a meltdown and hope it goes away. You have to pause, get curious, figure out what happened, and how to address it head on. Code is the same way. Rushed features and bad architecture don't disappear. They escalate and they become code debt, quietly at first, then all at once. Parenting taught me to listen, to stay calm in the chaos, to show up even when I'm tired. It made me a better developer, teammate, and problem solver. Empathy and resilience aren't soft skills, they're survival skills. And in tech, that's often what holds teams together. All of these stories, whether from the studio, the shop floor, or the living room, might seem unrelated to tech at first glance, but they're not. They're where I learned the skills that make me a better developer today. Precision, adaptability, empathy, resilience, these weren't things I picked up in a Python tutorial. They were things I forged through lived experiences. You don't need to come from a traditional path to belong in tech. And if you did, you still carry those same skills from other parts of your life that shape the way that you solve problems, collaborate, and build. So far, I've been sharing what I brought into tech and what I carried with me from other parts of my life. But working as a developer has changed me too. It's taught me how to lean into ambiguity, how to move forward even when my path isn't fully clear. And that's something I've taken back into my life outside of work. If I didn't allow for ambiguity, my parenting would be harsher. I'd expect things to follow a clean schedule and have a single right answer to every problem, which, as any parent knows, that is not how children work. It's taught me how to ask for help sooner, too. Back in the studio, if I got stumped and didn't ask a question, I risked more than just wasting time. I risked ruining a project, or even worse, a dangerous shop accident. And letting go of perfection, that's been huge. I used to think every product or project had to match the blueprint exactly. But in manufacturing, that mindset would have meant missing deadlines, delaying shipments, and overburdening my team. Sometimes done and functional is better than flawless and late. Tech pushed me to break things down into smaller steps, not just in code, but in communication. It taught me that iteration does not stop at the keyboard. It's how we learn, lead, and support each other. I've also seen how people overlook the hidden strengths that others bring in, especially when they come from a non-traditional background like mine. I've had peers assume that I needed to catch up on the fundamentals, when really all I needed was a chance to build on the systems thinking I already brought with me. I've been mentored by some truly generous and skilled people, but early on, I found myself holding back, unsure if my experience counted, or if I was just doing it wrong just because my path looked different. So if you're in a position to mentor or train someone, especially someone coming in from a different path, ask yourself, what assumptions are you making about what they do or don't know? Maybe they haven't built an API yet, but they manage logistics for a manufacturing line or run a classroom of 30 kids. That's experience in systems thinking, triage, prioritization, all core skills in tech. What might you see or they see differently than you, and how could that be valuable? Maybe they won't write code the same way you would, but they'll question things that others take for granted. They might notice usability gaps, edge cases, or risks that someone deep in the code base has stopped seeing. And if you're ever in a position to hire or recommend someone, don't look for the right keywords on their resume. Ask yourself, what non-traditional skills are already being used by the best people in my team, and am I looking for that in my next hire? I'd encourage you to think about where your own strengths come from. Not the ones on your resume, but the ones that helped keep you going, solve something hard, or connect with others. What's something outside of tech that's made you more thoughtful or creative? Maybe it was learning an instrument, coaching a team, or growing a garden. When did you learn to stay steady in the middle of a mess? Maybe it was during a career change, caregiving, or a tough team project. Who taught you to listen before reacting, or helped you see a different point of view? Think about a mentor, a partner, or a child that asked the exact right question at the exact wrong time. Where in your life have you built something that really mattered to you, even if no one saw it? Perhaps it was a passion project, organizing your family's chaos into a shared calendar, or even something physical like art or writing. Sometimes the most powerful tool you bring to the keyboard is everything that came before it. Thank you.